You guys are using PNFS in your product?
Yeah. Oh, you made me lie. I said only one more person.
It's so rare that, you know, also to socialize, not just to visit.
You guys meet so rarely, that's right. Yeah. When you have a chance, then you have to.
So I think we should start now.
Yes. We should.
Well, we've signed that thing, so magically that
Yeah,
no
but
illusion
it's
is
21
changed,
years,
right?
They've been sharing, and I think that might be the longest. Yeah. You want some, no, a medal, right? Not a plaque, a medal.
No.
Don't want, we're gonna give you one. Next time we meet.
So I don't want it, he wants one. I guess
Shep doesn't want. Yes.
Shepler gets two.
Oh, updated chapter. Okay, good. That goes here. Oops. No, I want to go back. Hold on.
Do you have anybody online or something?
Yes.
No, I mean, of course.
Lorenzo.
Yeah, but it's.
Lorenzo is,
Okay.
What about the guy, there's a guy that was pretty active from University of Toronto or something. What's his name?
Greg Macklin.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's not coming?
He's semi-retired.
Oh, semi-retired.
Everybody when I look at
He's not paid to work on it anymore, because he does it as a hobby.
So, welcome.
What, would that be a sort of a contribution in kind to take it off your taxes?
I don't know, he's Canadian, so.
Oh, I mean,
It's Canadian. Every time he makes a contribution to BSD, he apologizes. Sorry. Okay. No more jokes about our hosts. Hey, welcome to the NFSV4 working group. We have a slightly updated agenda, but let's just start here. Is Spencer on, by the way?
He might be on Jabber, but I can't figure out how to get onto that.
Yeah, we are. Anybody want to try to get on Jabber over there?
I've tried all week, I can't make it work.
Wow. Spencer. Text me, Spencer, if you have anything to say. Welcome. The NFSV working group at the 105th IETF. It means the NFSV4 working group has been going on since the early 60s. No. We have an agenda here. Let me go through it. First topic is with Dave Novak on minor protocol updates. That your document is called Updates to NFS, right? Or something like that. RPC-over-TLS, Chuck Lever, integrity measurement, Chuck Lever, RDMA, Chuck Lever, milestone review, which we'll have to beat on a lot. I was looking at Dave's slides. They're good to get our discussion going on our milestone. We do have to update the milestones, and Magnus will be paying attention to that section, definitely. The 5661 BIS, Dave Novak.
Still on the agenda after all these years?
Yeah, and then Soren's up with a discussion on data reduction extended attributes. That discussion has been going on since we got in the room. So let's just reach closure on that. And then we added delegation state IDs, Tom Haynes. That was added just now. So is there any other changes to the agenda? Anybody care?
I suggest moving the 5661 BIS discussion up to the discussion about 5661 Cecily.
Okay. You want to do it? You want to do that after that, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's fine.
I think I want to do after the milestone review.
All right.
You want to do it after milestone review?
Just fine.
Okay. Okay. Hi, David.
Thank you for coming. We are 7 now. No.
If anybody's online, they have at least put the NFSV4 working group at the farthest possible conference room from the center of the IETF as possible. This is.
It was a big one because there's a small one here.
Did you bring the catch box tomatoes, or was that my job?
No tomatoes. Okay. And then you every time you come in here, you sign when you register and you get your little agenda. You have a note well on it. It's a continuously evolving small note, by the way. But basically, the more important things are you're participating. This is maybe recording, perhaps, or taking minutes, and you're allowing all that to take place. And the other thing is that if you're aware of any IETF contribution is covered by patents or patent applications that are owned or controlled by you or your sponsor, you must disclose that fact or not participate in the discussion. So I guess that means bolt from the room, which would be a very telling movement during a discussion, I guess. But
You just need to keep silent.
This is,
Two on me, take on. 2 people on me, take on.
oh, okay.
One of them is Spencer, but it's not, so. Do we have a format?
Oh, okay. Oh, welcome, Rainier. Welcome, Lorenzo. So, I actually do look at the note well every time I come to an IETF meeting because it does change from meeting to meeting. Do take a look at it, but the core of it is the same. All right, let's start. So we decided to keep the agenda in the order it is, I believe, overriding Chuck's suggestion. That's okay. So let's do it. Dave, up.
Okay, sure. All right. Where do I stand? So,
Actually, right here with the X,
Yeah, because the mic. you need
and then
to-
you'll be able to see the slides on the
Okay,
screen
great.
right here. And then do you want me to do the slides or you want to do the slides?
well, it's okay. All right, sure.
Oh, so that's
Yeah,
interesting.
okay. So I want to talk about on the X. Okay, all right,
We have a box, now we have an X.
okay, sure.
Otherwise, they don't hear.
New protocol.
All right, yeah,
No,
okay. So anyway, we've made some updates. Some of them actually have gone through, and some of them in the process of going through. I want to talk about both the updates to both v4.0 and v4.1.
No, it's.
Yeah, almost working.
Almost, all right.
Yeah, no, you're gonna hit the thing, and I'm gonna just adjust it.
Okay, fine. All right.
There's a little circle with
I did.
4 corners in it. Get that to appear on the screen, click on it.
Wait, say that.
There's a top button.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hold on. The top.
You see the-
Yep.
Pull on the top button.
Down to the lower right.
Yeah.
Do that.
Push it on the top.
Bingo. Now-
No, not yet.
Now
You
keep
push,
the
you push.
clicker works.
No.
What?
See the clicker work.
Forward.
Go back.
Sure.
Bingo.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, now-
All right. All right, okay. So the v4.0 changes are limited to trunking. We had a trunking discovery, and it actually has been published. I don't know what, Chuck did. He got it through. The ESG did not stop him. The 4.1 is a tougher story, and I'm going to talk about my travails about that. So we added trunking discovery and transparent state migration to v4.1. Transparent state migration had been done in 4.0, and I guess a number of people bothered me about making sure that 4.1 was at the same level. So this was not published yet as an RFC, and that's a long story, and that's most of this talk. And it's kind of sad. But then I think we need to have an implementation discussion about what's happening with prototyping and getting this stuff to actually into the field. All right. So v4.0, we added trunking. We added more trunking to v4.0. The history of it is that originally in RFC 3530 and 7530, trunking was this sort of bad thing to avoid. And with RFC 7931, we allowed you to have trunking, but we forgot to say, well, you can, if you have 2 addresses, you can figure out whether they're trunked or not. But there was no way to say, oh, I have an address. What other addresses are trunked with that? So that was that was trunking discovery in addition to trunking detection. So in the v4.0, Chuck's document defined the interaction of trunking and migration. You can support, trunking, discovery and trunking. You can have two things that were trunked all of a sudden become not trunked. You can have things migrated, and when things are migrated, you can migrate from two trunk things to one path and the other thing, or the vice versa, and that's all supported. This was published as a proposed standard. It actually happened by the milestone date, although I don't know what the definition of final submission is, but anyway, it's published as an RFC anyway. Now for v4.1, we had more to do. We had to add trunking discovery, just as we did in v4.0. Also discover trunking migration. That's basically parallels what's in 4.0. And also had to add transparent state migration. So that was a bigger job. That made that document kind of enormous, and because of things in the ISG.
How many pages you said now?
Well, it was 600 pages. Yes, that's right. All right. So we had add session migration, and the fact that now, because you have migration, you can have migration of PNFS, metadata server, migration of the possibility of migrating from PNFS to non-PNFS and back again. Okay, so that's those things. And also, because of the need to do these things, there's a necessary cleanup. First of all, the way that the term replica was used in RFC 5661. We basically said, if you have two different addresses, they were treated as two different replicas, even though they really were actually two paths to one replica. So because of that, there's some terminological cleanup that had to be done. And also they had to be handling, because I think Chuck pointed out that, we weren't very clear about the alternative. You don't support transparent state migration. There were vague references to per FS grace periods, but a lot of the text did not really fill that in. There's a lot of gaps there that had to be added. So I revised the description of two ops: exchange ID. The description of exchange ID, but was inconsistent with state migration, and reclaim complete wasn't clear about the per FS grace period case. So also there was some cleanup of the error description to accommodate those things. Anyway, that was the package of things I had to do in v4.1.
What piece was that?
What?
In what piece was that?
Well, I'll go through that sad story.
Sorry.
Okay, the first thing is I produced this document that was basically, it was called Draft IETF NFSV4 MV1 MSNS update. And the paradigm we filed was, here are the updates, replace this by this, replace that by something else. And I thought it was clear, or as well organized as I could be. And that was okay during the working group's last call, IETF last call, and the AD review. But when the ISG took a look at that, a number of people said, oh, we don't like this. This sucks. And so I think they had a point, but anyway, that wasn't, we decided that wasn't any, we couldn't, there's no way that we'd get them to accept that. Yes.
So Chuck Lever, Oracle. I think the gist was, with my document, it was short enough that the diff style of that we used to update the document was brief enough that it wasn't bothersome. And the problem was, this document was like 3 times longer than mine, and I think
about 3.
I think we crossed a line here. It wasn't the problem that we don't like the here are the updates to apply to the spec paradigm. I think they didn't like the size of it.
Okay, sure.
The here are the updates paradigm combined with 80 pages of it. That I think that's what gave them
about
heartburn.
right.
So
Anyway, so we needed a more BIS-like document, but I started looking at what a full BIS is and where we were, and Tom sort of indicated, oh, gee, you're crazy to do that. Basically, something the words of that, not those exact words, but that was the idea. So I settled on something that would be closer to a BIS document. Basically, I replaced section 11 and just add a few other updates. I thought that would be okay. The ISG still did not like that. So they want an even more BIS-like document. But a full BIS, you have 8178, you had issues with RFC 8434, internationalization, security. I'll talk about that in a later talk. So finally settled on a partial BIS, a document that will be a BIS in the sense that will obsolete RFC 5661, but it won't be the BIS that addresses every problem in RFC 5661. And no other changes other than the namespace changes. So I have that document. That document is called Draft IETF NFSV4 RFC 5661 SESQI MSNS. It's submitted. I hope people will read it, comment on that. And I think it needs to go through working group last call, and then we can get it considered by the ISG. I'd like people to look at it. You could, it's 600 pages, but I don't think you should read 600 pages. You can, it's close enough to RFC 5061 that you can diff the things. And there's some bugs in RFC diff that I try to get the author of RFC diff to fix, but somehow we had some email problems communicated. Now, I have a few changes. I also have a query to Ben Caddick about what he wants to see as the reference for AFS. I hope we'll hear from him. There'll be any changes I get probably in the next week or so. I'll submit a DO 1, and then we'll see whether we can go to the working group last call on that. After that, I hope to move the document forward, and that's the only path I see on that document. All right, that's it. All right. Okay, implementation issues. Now, particularly with regard to trunking, we would like to get started on implementation. Now, I think the work on v4.0 is published, and the 4.0 and 1 and 4.1 handling of trunking is pretty much the same. So I think the work that you do on one would carry over to the others. But I find that some of the people in this group are right now saying, oh, v4.0 is old, you don't want to bother with it. But given that they're the same in both, maybe the same work would do. I'd like to have that discussion if people have some feelings about when they would be doing the trunking implementation.
So Dave, the question is, if it's as big, do you think that this time will pass? Or maybe you should have a small document to give to ISG so they see the differences, maybe, I don't know. Because it seems to me that the same 600 pages could be still a problem.
Well, I asked that question of Magnus, and he said, don't worry about it. But I don't know whether to believe him or not.
That was a long way.
So Magnus Westland. Yeah, I mean, we have discussed it. I have notified them, and I even talked to you around this about some of the implications. I think what they there's a majority of the ISG that seems to be liking this. Oh, now we do an update, we should see so you can just diff it, etc. I'm maybe not as convinced as the others. But no, I mean, this is the plan. We go forward with this as full, basically implementing the full updates in the full corpus document, and that becomes the next then reference. And then if you're going to do a 4.1 piece forward, if that would happen, yeah, I know what I would like to see, but that's, yeah, it's going to be problematic. So, but we'll discuss that later. That's a separate topic. But for this, implement this, I think we take it one step at a time implementing things. But I mean, clear smaller updates, or are they saying this is an extension to something which isn't existing that you can still do as a standalone. So yeah, if you have new functionality, just do that as a separate document saying this base extends the 5661 base. What is it now? Yeah, the namespace one will be the kind of a core reference in the next steps.
Okay, so we'll just see what happens. Yeah. All right. All right, as far as implementation, I think I'd like to know what people are doing as far as implementation of trunking. Chuck, do you know of any on the client side, or what your plans are, or do you have plans?
Chuck Lever, Oracle. I don't know of anything in specific. I'm just trying to collect my thoughts about this. I think one problem is that nobody has implemented FS Locations Info, which is a good chunk of the pending document that you were just discussing.
Actually, isn't that big? You could, although that is supported, and
It's supported, and there are some.
it should be supported even if you do FS locations.
Right. Well, there are some things in the new document that talk about, combining the use of TCP and RDMA and
Yes.
the use of the RDMA flag and things like that. That's all I meant about FS Locations Info. The Linux client doesn't support trunking right now at all. So you have, NetApp has some resources that could implement there. I'm not really planning to do any implementation there. Solaris doesn't have any resources that I know of to try this out. I mean, they were the main drivers of the transparent state migration work in both Solaris and Linux.
Okay. All right. So as far as the trunking thing, it sounds like NetApp may be working on both in parallel. And I think my approach would be to try to do as much as the 4.0 and 4.1 to work together. I'm not sure how that works in the code as it exists. Now, as far as transparent state migration, the only server implementation was on Solaris, and that's not going to go into 4.1.
The Solaris server does support 4.1.
It does.
Yeah.
Even though before it was an RFC. Okay.
Right, and they prototype most of the stuff that you've done up to about 18 months ago in that document. So I think that's pretty well.
Okay.
The Linux client does support transparent state migration in both 4.0 and 4.1.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. So that means that if the client's there, then I can think about maybe
But
doing
there is
server
one
part, but I
more
don't
use
know about
case
the
that I
resources.
should mention. I don't know the state of it because I asked them to come here. VMware is implemented finally the 4.1 support, so I don't know where I could ask them after this.
That'd be good
I know
to
they
know.
implemented because they asked some questions, but
About 4.1 in general or about the specific?
no, specific for the trunking
Okay.
because they have how you call it, migrations in the.
Okay. If they're interested in
So,
migration as
yeah.
well, then I should, I should be in contact
I
with them.
will check and send them to the list.
Okay, sure. All right, so that, I think, ends that talk.
Okay.
All right, my next, or I think that's you, Chuck. Oh, all right, I got one more slide.
Oh.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay. Trunking implementation, well, this is irrelevant, but Chuck has told me that basically it appears that except for people who are not in this room or on Meet.go, it's probably NetApp who's going to be doing the starting work on both the client and the server. And transparent state migration, Chuck tells me that 4.1 support is in the client. There's essentially prototype, unofficial, but pretty close to the document, support for v4.1 in the server. And I don't know what my plans are, but I will think about what plans I have for state migration in my server. Okay. All right. And I think that is the end of it, finally. Okay, that is. Now it's you, Chuck.
Just so you know, they implemented what we
Use
work
the-
with them.
Use the microphone.
No, it was private. VMware, remember our project? So they implemented finally something.
I have the scepter of unseemly power.
Years ago.
Next presentation's by Chuck Lever, RPC on TLS.
There's a conversation going on in the room.
Yeah, Chuck's waiting for the undivided attention of the, yeah, got it.
All right. So this is work that's happened since the last time we met, which was here a year ago. I proposed that we enter the 21st century, that NFS enter the 21st century and support encryption by default. In other words, when you install a client, it could have some facility for using on-the-spot created certificate material to encrypt its transmission to a server in just the same way that a web server could. A browser and a web server can do it. And this slide sort of enumerates the things that we're really looking for in this feature. We especially want to protect the use of auth-sys because that's still widely deployed. A lot of people depend on it. It's very simple to deploy. You just use UID numbers and make sure that they match up on the client server and you're all done. It's a lot simpler than GSS, which is why GSS is not more widely deployed. I think I was also interested in taking advantage of the kind of hardware implementations of encryption offload that are available for TLS. Fortunately, most operating systems that are widely deployed, like Linux and Windows, have software support already for TLS and support for such NICs that allow hardware offload. So these are the two main benefits that we're hoping to get. And I mentioned privacy already. I've had actual user requests for this. Oracle, many people don't know this, but Oracle does have a cloud, just like Azure and Google and Amazon. The Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI, folks came to me and asked for support for NFS with encryption, so that when anybody brings up a tenant with a bunch of Linux clients, that they can get privacy on the wire. It turns out that Amazon already has this feature. They have a tunneling feature that they've got built in. They've got a subcommand, a mount subcommand that allows them to create an SSH tunnel on the client that connects to the server, and then they tunnel NFS over it. There was an interesting article in, I think, LWN, or was it Linux Journal, about it 9 months ago, where a guy outlined exactly how he did this and provide scripts. And it looked like something you tear your hair out to implement. I mean, there's just a huge number of little tweaky things to do. And I thought, why can't we do this in the protocol and just, not require any kind of SSH tunnel at all? So privacy was the first most important goal. The second one was we want to be able to provide a degree of machine authentication. In other words, the clients should be able to authenticate the server, make sure they're connecting to the right machine, and the server should be able to authenticate the clients. And when they do that, then they can use the authentication material as part of an authorization of the client to make sure that this is a client that is allowed to talk to me, and they're sure because there's cryptographic authentication going on. There are some secondary benefits. I don't have to go through those. Most of the stuff is listed is already discussed in the introduction of the RPC-on-TLS draft. The third bullet usually trips some people up, but the idea there is that we want the ability to provide an authentication mechanism for the machines that is completely independent of the authentication mechanism that's used for users. So, for example, a client can use auth-sys, and it can use TLS on the wire to authenticate who the client is, but it doesn't use TLS to authenticate users. Unlike GSS, when you use GSS, you're stuck with GSS authentication of both users and the clients and the machines. So we are already working on prototypes. Tigran Merkchan has been working on prototypes of client and server in user space for the German research firm DAISY. He brought it to Bakeathon in May and demonstrated it. Linux is also getting a kernel prototype implementation that Trond is working on, my co-author. That is still in progress. I had a couple more listed here on this slide, but they're folks who probably don't need a public mention of prototyping efforts in case they decide to scrap. So, let's just say there are some other interests.
Yeah, we have a prototype.
Okay, that might even be mentioned in the implementation status section of the document.
Anything from AWS? Because I know they're working on this. I also have some friends.
So you're asking about Amazon?
Yeah.
We've had some in-person communication with the Amazon NFS team. They have their Elastic file system is NFSV 4.1 based.
I just want to mention that if somebody's using them, so.
Yeah, there are tenants of the
Sorry if I
Amazon.
missed
There are tenants of the Amazon cloud that are using their encryption technique, and they met with us recently. Trond and I met with them to discuss how stable the document is and what the Linux prototype would look like, and how key material would be managed and things like that. So they're looking very closely at this, and I have a sense that they're interested in implementing something that will be interoperable with Linux. We've also talked about some future works that future work that's going to be needed for NFS support for TLS. It's probably a bunch of little details, but probably the most important thing is tying together the lease management credential, the thing that's used for authenticating set client ID and exchange ID with the transport credential, so that the clients are fully authenticated. There are some other details which I'm not remembering at the moment, but we'll need a document to write this stuff down. I don't think it'll be a long one. We've also been thinking about, in the longer term, creating an RPC on quick transport. Lars tells me that quick is probably not quite mature enough to begin actual work on this, but it's coming close, and I think it would be good for us if we started looking closely at quick to understand what we would need to do to build such a transport and what capabilities it would give us. I don't have to go into that right now unless people would like to, but you all know me, so come talk if you have opinions about this. Now, this slide is next steps for the document itself, that the RPC-on-TLS document. We're wondering if we should have a charter milestone for this document, because there isn't one right now. And as I began this presentation, just reiterate that this work has sort of blossomed over the last 9 months to a year since we last talked about the charter. So now is a good time for us to consider that. We've had one sector review already. That was a more nascent version of the document. Maybe we want another one now that we've added a lot more detail to it, especially around authentication. We've had some comments from implementers requesting more detail regarding the machine authentication and what the requirements are there. I'm not sure we need to put those in. I know that my co-author is not interested in nailing that down firmly right now. We want to give implementation some freedom to experiment in that regard. So I'm kind of open to either approach. I would like to hear opinions about that. I think Dave is interested in seeing some more text focusing on the weaknesses of AuthSys and how in-transit encryption will help close some of those exposures. I think that will feed into this improvements to the security consideration sections for NFS in later documents. And obviously we need to refine the threat model and security analysis presented in the security consideration section, because this is certainly all about security. We need to make sure that that is tight. I think this is the last slide. Yes, it is. Questions, discussion?
The action for the working group I hear is to add a milestone, basically. Magnus. No. That the one action is adding a milestone for this work to the charter, because it's work going on that's not even covered on our stuff, and I need you to think about that. Okay. I mean, besides all the work that has to be done, from my perspective, the milestone update. Okay. Thank you, Chuck. Any other observations, comments, questions?
Lars, do you think we should take this through sector review again, or should we just put it in front of the ISG and see if they have any opinion about it?
Lars, I think you should probably get somebody from sector to look at it again, some TLS guy. I don't expect any problems because it got better, right? But why not make them work a little bit?
Well, I'm wondering if they're going to find a detail that they might be able to argue with now.
Yeah, so I mean, the more review you get now, the more power you have later on to say, hey, you had like guys looking at this before, why do you come at this stage?
Okay. Do I need an AD to press that button that you press to get the sector review, or is that something I can do?
He can, the chair can.
Okay. This is not an official request to press that button right now, but be on the ready.
Okay.
We're blocked. We can't push the button.
Okay.
Close.
Okay. Any more comments or questions? Okay. Next.
Yep. Okay. So then.
Yeah, I have 3 in a row.
It's a multi-step process.
Is this one or is it the other one? I think it's the RDMA one first.
Okay.
Does it matter?
It's your.
It does kind of.
It's your party. Hold on.
I don't feel like crying today.
The Chuck Lever party. Okay. Sorry, I gotta press all these buttons to make sure that you have control. Look at that. Okay.
Thank you. So this is kind of the work that, there is an opportunity cost to working on exciting new technology like RPC-on-TLS. This is the work that got backburnered when we discovered that we had some excitement around RPC-on-TLS. Last year, we were talking about RPC-over-RDMA version 2. And so I thought I would sort of discuss this document that is still a personal draft and see if we can move this forward a little bit. Originally, when this was proposed several years ago, we had some issues in RPC-over-RDMA version 1 that we thought were kind of important to address immediately. One was the ability to integrate to support transport properties. And because we wanted to support remote invalidation and larger inline thresholds, because the default inline threshold for version 1 is a kilobyte, which is too small for NFSV4. So our goals were to try to get those transport properties supported and enable extensibility so we could, so it was easier for us to build on the transport because version 1 had a lot of restrictions in it that kind of prevented us from doing that. And then later we added, in my opinion, I thought we needed a little more we needed some protocol changes to support remote invalidation fully, especially for implementations like the Solaris client, because it uses a mix of R keys that are able to be remotely invalidated and some that aren't in each RPC and on each connection. We also found the need to add some better error reporting to the transport. So these are the four sub bullets on this slide are the ones that we're most interested in. So I thought I'd list some potential extensions that we could do if we had extensibility in the transport. Dave, I think the first one that was proposed was Dave's idea to use send and receive for some in-place data transfer instead of RDMA. Another one was eliminating the use of reply chunks, and the reason why we'd want to do that is because they are needed. You have to pre-provision those on the client, and sometimes the client guesses wrong. Protocols can't always tell, like protocols like NFS can't always tell how big they need. Dave has also suggested that we probably want to add some machine authentication to the transport protocol in the same way that we were doing with TLS and TCP. That actually has not been proposed yet, but I thought I'd put it on here just as an example, potential extension. And then last summer, a year ago, I came here and talked about a problem I noticed with credit accounting in RPC-over-RDMA v1. There are a number of shortcomings there, and my especially concerned about transport control plane messages. In other words, the credit accounting mechanism in version 1 is tied to RPC messages, and if we want to do, if we want to send messages over the transport that are not RPC messages, we would need to somehow account for that in our credit and our flow control, especially if we want to add such control plane messages in extensions. So that is the last proposed change to the original set of goals around this version 2 proposal. I can just mention some prototyping that's been done. A document that is currently waiting for ISG review is RPC-RDMA CM private data that handles transport properties for version 1. I built a prototype for that in Linux, the NFS server and client, and that has demonstrated the need for and the benefits of both support for remote invalidation and larger inline sizes. And it's also identified one or two shortcomings or weaknesses, I guess. For example, that stuff has to be set up before the transport is fully instantiated, and the receive buffers and send buffers are created, even though to make the connection, you have to create some of that infrastructure. So there's a chicken and egg problem there that we didn't foresee, but in the prototyping, we've managed to work with that and demonstrate that it's still beneficial. The area that we haven't really prototype is the extensibility features in version 2. So we have to think about that carefully. Dave suggested I add this slide. I think there's some information on here that we might need to make a decision about whether we want to adopt this as a working group document now before we've actually, before the proposal is feature complete. Questions and discussion. I mean, here's some bullet points that I thought we probably ought to talk about a little bit before we proceed with adoption.
I don't think the working group document has to have a bow on it to go into the discussion, and that'll start locking it into completion, milestone dates and everything. If there's Lars, Magnus, any feedback here? The comment was that the document is not feature complete. However, and he was working towards that for the working group, official working group document submission. We're moving into a working group document. I don't think that's a requirement for the working group document to bring it into the working group to actually work on the document. Right. So let's just move forward on that and update the milestone on this thing to get that locked and loaded for completion. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Dave wanted me to ask if we ought to include one of these extensions that I put the slide up about as an example, or make it part of the document, or should we just sort of set that aside and say, yeah, that's future work?
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we don't have the right people in the room to talk about that.
Okay, Dave Novak, the one I've,
Get closer.
okay, sure. Well, you have a long list, but there's actually three. The one that I proposed is definitely, if it goes in future work. So I wouldn't think that one certainly should be in the document. The other ones, I don't know, other people might have other opinions, but I don't feel there's any strong reason. The one that I think is most necessary is the machine authentication stuff, but that also could be future work because we'll figure that out later. I think as we make progress on the authentication on the RPC-TLS side, we'll need something matching it for the things where you don't have that. I think that's also future work.
I largely agree with that. The machine authentication stuff, it seems a little more critical and would make, I think, this version more appealing both to the ISG and to potential implementers. So it might be something we actually do want to consider putting into the document. I know it's a heavy lift. I agree with that.
Okay, so can I ask you a big favor?
Yes.
It's not a big favor, it's a little favor.
Yeah, sure.
Can you start, let's move the document to working group document, but let's work on that. But then also, can you start a thread on the alias about the document content and this issue so we can bounce it back and forth? Okay.
Yes. So the next revision of this document will be working group 00.
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Next. That's you.
Yes, but now I go back to the agenda order I originally had.
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay, most of you are probably rolling your eyes and saying, "Not this again." I'm hoping that we can make enough forward progress on this that there will be some agreement on what needs to be done to make this document move forward, or decide that it's just not going to work. So the document now contains an introduction section that I've tried to keep pretty high level. And as such, it's probably not touching your hearts. So today I want to complement that architectural description of the purpose and design of integrity measurement with a use case. And then I've also been asked for interoperability analysis, and I think I have enough here that I can share that with you and provide some operational examples. And hopefully that will be enough that by the end of the talk, we can actually talk about the remaining controversies that erupted on the mailing list, and maybe we can get through them and make some progress. So the purpose of integrity measurement, integrity measurement is kind of this highfalutin term that maybe doesn't mean anything to people, but the whole idea here is that we want to have some way of protecting file content from when it's created all the way to when a user runs it, to the point where you do an exec VE on it. My sponsor, Oracle, is mostly interested in the content of executable files, and maybe configuration files, not necessarily files that a user creates. So that sort of narrows the scope of the use case a little bit. The idea here is that we have a protection envelope that's continuous from the point when someone creates the executable, say MV or a database application, to the point where it's actually used, and it's protected at rest on the disk or whatever storage medium it's on. It's protected in backups. It's protected in transit when it's being installed. Everything. So the extension that I'm proposing in NFS enables this protection envelope to stretch from an NFS server to an NFS client. So the idea is that you'd be able to install one of these protected binaries on an NFS server, and when someone does an exec VE on a client that has mounted that server, that protection extends from the server's disks through the network all the way to the client. So now a little mind-numbing mathematics. I'm just going to state some terminological definitions here so that we can talk about this quickly. Suppose we have a software vendor. I'm going to call the software vendor V. This vendor has a public key pair, or has a key pair, a public key and a private key. And the software vendor publishes a public key to its customers via the normal mechanisms of that kind of thing. So V has a stream of versions of an application, A. It publishes a finalized version of this application, say a version 1.0. It generates a checksum in a trusted environment, and it signs it with its private key. So now to distribute this software, the vendor publishes both the application file content and the signed checksum. So taking NFS out of the picture for a moment, we can say, okay, what does a local system need to do after it's installed one of these things? It's got to have a place for storing these keys, the public keys at least, from various vendors. It has to have a security module that runs in a privilege mode, and that can generate the checksums and verify the signature of the private the signed checksums that it gets. And it has to have a policy for handling the times when the appraisal fails. That policy might be, you're not allowed to access the executable. It might be, I'm going to report you in an audit log. It might be do nothing, but it's going to have a policy. So just on a local file system, the customer might install the application in a local file, and it stores the checksum, the signed checksum, as an extended attribute. And whenever this application is run, then the local security module computes the checksum of it, and it verifies that the stored signed checksum matches the checksum that it computed. Oops, sorry, I'm backing up. There we go. And as I said, the local policy then determines exactly what happens if the signature verification fails or the checksum verification fails. So what does this look like when NFS is in the picture? Today, what happens is the server has the policy engine and the private the privilege module. And when it reads the file off the disk, it does all the checking. And when the checking fails, it reports that there's an access error. And the client can't get access to it. So it looks like someone just changed the ACL on the file. With the NFS extension, NFS would expose the extended attribute that's stored on the server to the client, so the client can make its own decisions about this, and in fact keep its own audit log. It can have its own policy about whether to fail access to the file, report the problem in audit log, but most importantly, it protects the data in transit between the server and the client. So here's one of the pieces that people have been asking me for a while about, and that is how to deal with interoperability. In other words, when client A writes some of this metadata into a file, how does client B read it? How is it guaranteed to be able to read it? Well, the local modules have had to deal with this problem forever. They have to handle backwards compatibility as the operating system is upgraded. Obviously, they don't have to reinstall applications or regenerate the checksums or resign them. So the security module has to understand how to read old versions of it. And obviously, source vendors will, as I said before, release a sequence of application versions, and they may change the way they sign and generate the checksums over time. So the security module has to be responsible for reading this data, understanding it, and or applying a policy to it. If it can't read it, it will just say, I can't confirm that this checksum is valid or not. And in that case, it can either decide that it's a checksum failure or just let the application access it and say it's unverified. So I think it's time for a little discussion. Do we think the introduction to the document now is adequate, or does it need some of the information I presented today included in it? Do you think my discussion of the interoperability concerns I just presented is good enough to put in the document, or do we need more than that? One of the questions that I have not been able to get a good answer on is what's the level of permission that's needed for a client to modify the extended attributes on the server? Do we need to add a new error code to the NFS protocol that says there's an integrity failure on the server? We can stop here for a moment. Any opinions, comments? Certainly, we've had some of this discussion on the mailing list already, and we haven't been able to reach any kind of opinion about it. So I'm bringing it up here now in person.
So I have just one question because I was thinking.
Brian Pulaski, Chair, I have a question. You are? Your name?
Sorry. Sorry. So.
Affiliation? What's your company?
Dell, I said.
Never mind.
I said Sorin Dell. I said. It's not my name, Dell, but. So the only question and problem that I was trying to think about it is when the file is local and has extended attribute and is moved to the NFS, would that impact the, because when you move it, you may lose some of the characteristics. So the question is this going to address that? Because I think that's a use case that could happen.
The signed checksum is moved with the file content.
So it's from the whatever file system, when it moved, it gets its own.
Yes, it's an extended attribute, and the tools, the standard file system tools like tar and CP and MV all have to.
So
not
it will
MV,
preserve, in fact, if you move
we'll
to a local to the NFS.
Right,
Yeah.
that will preserve that extended attribute.
Tom Haynes, Hammerspace. Just a comment, I would give an error code that's specific, so we don't have to guess.
Okay, I've created one in the latest version of this called NFS4 Error Integrity. Do people feel that's adequate, or would like to rename it?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. It's a generic error code. It can be used for other purposes. For example, as long as the client says, I support integrity checking, then the server is allowed to return that code. And it could return it for other reasons like, oh yeah, I couldn't read that because the parity is bad on a RAID or something like that.
Oh, wait, oh, sorry.
David Blackdell, make sure that you also cover the legacy client that's doing, where the server is doing what you describe as current behavior to protect the client that doesn't understand what his signature is or how to check it.
Yeah, that's discussed in the document. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You referred to the client, to the case of the client.
Step closer.
Okay, yes, Dave Novak. You referred to the case of the client not supporting the attribute. Right now, the server says what attributes he supports. There's no way that I know for a client to say, I do or don't support this.
That's right. That's part of the extension that I'm proposing. So if there's a legacy client, it doesn't ask if the server supports this feature, and the server is not allowed to return the new error code. It would return e-access instead, which is what it does today. So can I assess the general comfort level of people in this room for moving forward with this document, or do we need to take another approach?
Nobody is proposing another approach. So there's only one question on the table.
Well,
Um,
I can, if people are not comfortable with this approach, I would propose something else. That's what I meant, sorry.
Nobody in the front of the room sitting at the chairs table is asking for that.
Okay.
So,
Great.
generally okay? Okay.
Should we hum?
Yes. So, I would rather take this to working group discussion than to document, which basically kicks the process in of us deciding whether or not we want to actually ship this thing. Okay. So instead of talking about shipping it, we'll talk about whether we like it.
So we've had some
seriously.
procedural issues on the list. When I publish new versions of this document, there is one person on the list who is not here, who objects every time.
Okay.
That's okay.
But let's discuss that later.
It's rough consensus. It's not.
All right.
It's not agreement.
Yeah.
All right.
If I wanted everybody to agree with me, I would.
No, I'm just asking for
Right,
what
most
is
of
the process for helping this document move forward despite the objection.
Submit it as working group document.
It is a working group document.
Okay.
David Black, after confirming the decision, the sense of the room here on the list, that it should be working group doc, then submit as working group doc. I want to make sure I understand the metadata interoperability. It sounds like from an NFS protocol point of view, the new attributes contents are opaque because the IMA and the software vendor are in cahoots and NFS doesn't understand what's going on and doesn't need to. Okay.
The very last prepositional phrase you used is exactly the point. It doesn't need to.
Yes, and it's not trying to. In particular,
And it's not trying to.
in particular, this is not headed down a rat hole of defining signature formats and signature algorithms. That's not NFS's problem. It doesn't care.
That has been my position since day one, and there are some people on the list who feel that it really needs to be done by us. By somebody.
Problem is, it's not like there's another,
Mike.
it's not like there is someone else.
Closer.
It's not like there's some other authority who will write this down.
That's the
Linux
problem.
doesn't want to. That's the problem.
Yes.
I think that's the level. Some level, I say go forward with it,
Yeah,
but that's my discomfort.
yeah, and it's gonna, let's see, it's gonna have to be left to somebody else because the works the way it does in the local case, I think is the crucial, to me, is at least a crucial argument that takes this out of the scope of what NFS cares about. The other thing I'll note is, yeah, that proper level of permission question is a biggie. Keep asking because there's a denial of service attack there.
Okay.
There's one more slide. But the pointer's not responding anymore.
Here. Actually, there's
Two more
slides.
Oh. This is not in the charter. Should we add a charter milestone?
Yes, we have to add a milestone for this.
Okay.
If it's, yes, sorry. I know Dave's going to have a discussion later about milestones. We need to,
Just, it's limited. It's just gonna say.
Yeah, I know,
this
I
is
know.
what you have to do. I'm not gonna get into the question of whether we do it.
right. But we need to clean up the milestones. It's sanitation work. Okay. So yes, milestone, hold on here. Notes and delivery. And what else is there?
What's the criterion that I need to meet before we can do a last call? Do we think? Is that not something we want to decide here? That's fine, but I thought
again, I ask Brian Plesky. Again, I ask you to restart the conversation on the working group alias, please.
Okay.
And with an update of what you covered today. And then let's drive. Okay.
All right.
Please?
One more slide.
And by the way, Spencer's on too. He's taking lots of notes, I'm sure.
Indeed.
I'm taking notes.
One more slide.
Yeah. So,
I'm not sure this is really super interesting. Probably the rest of the talk wasn't really super interesting, but there's a lot more to IMA than just file content. And there's a whole section of it that I did not try to propose or implement around protecting the attributes, file attributes. And that would include ACLs and access control like SMAC, attributes, file capabilities, and a few other things. I've asked the question in the Linux integrity community whether that feature, that part of the IMA is necessary before we can demonstrate whether NFS with IMA is useful or effective. And they seem to think that we don't need EVM for that, so we can skip the attribute verification for now. And there are a lot of problems around that, of course, because every operating system has a different way of representing these attributes. And there's no standard implementation of file capabilities either. So there are there's a whole rat's nest of stuff there that I'm avoiding by not attempting that. The other thing that I am leaving for future work is dealing with the performance implications of changing one of these files and re-signing it, or changing a large file and having to checksum it repeatedly. And the draft is agnostic on how this data is cached, because the security module, the privilege module, is supposed to cache the checksums. They're supposed to compute the checksum once when it's read in, and then cache that. So it's supposed to handle performance reasonably well. But anyway, I'm punting on that. So that's it for this talk.
okay, and I would prefer not expanding the work now.
Okay.
Yeah, that definitely would
Fair
like
enough.
to wrap it. Okay. Brian Plowski. Are you the next talk to?
No.
All right, hold on. No, you got me all out of order.
Said 3, it was 3.
Yeah, and we got that. Okay, then this one.
Thanks, and enjoy the veal. Thanks.
What do you say?
Enjoy the view.
The meal?
Veal, I don't know.
The veal?
Tip your waiter.
Yeah, okay.
So is this broken now
It
or?
worked, it worked. I saw you push the button.
Does it work?
Okay, so this
So when
is
you move the mouse and it showed on other, it was you. Sorry.
Try.
okay. Yeah. All right.
No, it's
No.
You want me to do that or what you do the
No.
Do the full screen again. Then
Do what?
on the right hand side.
on the right hand side.
That one,
Do that.
and then the clicker works.
No, the clicker worked without full screen before. It just didn't work well.
Well, anyway, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, regardless of that, this is a review of the it's been a year. Makes sense to review the milestones and where we are or aren't. All right.
Sorry.
Whoa.
I'm doing it.
Okay, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
All right. So if it doesn't work, it's all your fault.
Yeah.
All right. All right. This is the 2 milestones we've actually achieved. One is the migration issues document. That was the goal, was working group last call, and we decided after working group last call that there was no point in publishing that as an RFC. So it is done. There's no RFC. The other one that was achieved is V4.0 trunking discovery with Chuck got through the RFC. That was done through ISG. That was done as RFC 8587 and is published as pros stuff. So 2 out of our 8 milestones are done. Now on to the next slide.
So it's actually working now.
Yeah.
It was off.
Somebody turned it off.
Okay. It was you, right? Okay. Anyway, all right. So now of the remaining ones, we have, these are the 4 where we haven't achieved them, and the target date is in the past. So that is of a total of 4 milestones. So NVMe for PNFS, which there's still interested in within the working group, but I'll talk about it later, but the target was a long time ago, let's see, over a year ago, and it's clear that's not going to be done. We don't know, we want to figure out what to do about that. Now, trunking discovery and transparent state migration, sort of already talked about in the previous talk. Those two milestones are one document, and the target was March 2019. We had all these go-arounds with the ISG, and I'm hoping that we'll go to working group last call and get I hope, since I've given the ISG what they're asking for, I hope that they'll be okay with that. And I'm hoping for October 2019. And that has been discussed elsewhere. And CM private data, the original target was June of this year, but there were some issues with getting the document thing, getting started with the write-up, and I think Chuck said it was now in ISG. I think it does have to go to AD review, but in any case, I expect it to be done to be reached by September 2019. So
Chuck Lever, you're right. It's waiting for consensus write-up and then AD review.
I think. Oh, right. All right. Spencer did move it to, but he did not actually produce the consensus. So he's waiting for consensus. It needs consensus write-up, AD review, and then go to the ISG. And we hope that all gets done by September. Okay. That's the end of those slides. Then we also have a few slides which all right, RDMA layout for BNFS. I have separate slides for that. That we have a target date of September. That's probably not achievable, and we'll discuss that later. And the RPC-over-RDMA, Chuck's already talked about that. The target date is December. I think Chuck has to make a decision whether that's achievable or it needs to be adjusted. I don't know what. Probably. All right.
Okay.
I think that's a good guess, but we need a new guess from you. Okay.
You want it now?
Whenever I can get it. If you have it now, you can give it to me now.
We'll talk.
Okay, we'll talk. Okay. Now we have to think about adding milestones. We had an initial set of milestones for 2 years, and that 2 years is over. But all the milestones are not gone. But we have to be thinking about replacement milestones. Now, for each new milestone, we need an owner who's going to drive it, a target date, a preliminary document, which could be an individual draft, but it has to be an individual draft where we think it's conceivable that it will become a working group draft. And it has to be and part of that is working group interest. And we're working with a 2-year window that should have a target date before August of 2021, way off then. Okay. Anyway, some possibilities. Well, we both mentioned integrity measurement as one thing, might get an RPC-TLS. Some future working group that may get milestones like RFC-5661 BIS, which I'm going to talk about. Maybe Chuck's mentioned the NFS focused security related document, but that is not. It's not far enough along that might be a milestone, but that might in the future be a milestone.
It's nebulous.
It's nebulous. RPC-over-RDMA version 2, I guess that also actually is a current milestone. I made a last pass to this and said, oh, gee, I did my slides 2 weeks ago, and now I look at them, and that's wrong. So that's already a milestone. Some possibilities, I think, draft CL NFSV4 sec label extensions. Okay, no to descends. Tom's dead end. Okay, all right. Tom's document might eventually turn into something that might have a milestone.
Yes, it should.
Okay, fine. Then we'll talk about milestone.
That's my document later.
Okay, right. We've been talking about flexible files V2. That
So
might be,
no, because the flex file V2 will only come out when we Kerberize it, and someone's got to be interested in doing that.
okay, so that's probably not likely.
No.
All right. Now, NVMe for PNFS. Now, it's expired a long time ago. The current target is gone a year ago. We've been just keeping on, hoping that somehow this would be revived, but it hasn't been. It can't be revived in its current form. Basically, we have to declare it dead and reincarnate it. Now, you mentioned the possibility of working on that. So,
Depending on how my presentation goes, I have the intention to take over that and finish it. I know there's a gap. I have to figure out the gap, but I don't know if I can count on Christoph, but I intend to pick it up. So if there's a condition for my data reduction. So
You will need his permission to do that.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Without Christoph, I cannot do it.
Wait,
wait a
sorry,
minute, do we need
hold
his
on, Chuck.
permission?
I need that at the mic. What are you saying?
Chuck Lever Oracle. So in order for someone to take over this document, they'll need permission of Christoph.
Why? It's a document for the working
That's to
group.
do the next version of it as with taking off his name.
When
You
I
can do a new document that just copies it.
when I was working on the first on the BIS RDMA drafts, Spencer insisted that I get permission from Tom Talpe to do this work.
It's not required.
Yeah, wait,
We've done
hold
this
on.
in the past.
Wait, the area directors are leaving the room. No. I figured out that Magnus
Maybe
is
he should've
trying
left the room.
to
I don't
reach
know.
some step goal today because he takes the longest path to the microphone.
So, I mean, if this document had been submitted to IETF under the BCP 78 copyright, etc., we have anyone has right to do derivative work based on that text. So, but that's the formality of it, at least. So, but yeah, I mean, it's nice to ask, or at least inform that we intend to make it go forward.
Yeah, and I think that's what Spencer probably meant. Spencer, text me if you disagree. Hey, no, so let me reach out to Christoph, if you don't mind, and find out what he's doing here. I'm wondering if he just basically, the people that he was working with are no longer interested in this part.
I spoke to him 2 weeks ago. He wants to do it. He just doesn't have time.
I know that.
Okay,
Way all
so
along.
that means that we can ask his permission. Maybe you can reach to him and he will.
I'll reach out to Christoph.
Yeah.
We
On the
want to
other-
help him. That's what we want to do.
On the other hand, look, I don't want to take over his work. I just want to, the question is, sorry, in 5 by the way, Del. The question is, how do we go around, it expired or a year ago, so.
No, you can just resubmit it. Even if it's expired, it will automatically.
Resubmit it, not continue like making version
If you
one.
continue on with the next version, it will automatically
Ah.
unexpire. it.
Okay.
I've done this many times.
Slacker.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they don't keep statistics about that.
Probably do, but.
So in any case, my proposal is to, sorry again, my proposal is to revive it, and I don't know, do we need the agreement here, or I just do it and then, because it will become a working group document. I don't want to take it only as private. I think it was private.
Let me talk to Chris. So action here. I'm going to talk to Christoph and let me take it to the alias with the plan for this doc. Okay.
Last second, you shouldn't submit it as draft Hellwig but out of nicety. You could, right? That's his name, but you can take the content, and if you want to, you can, acknowledge him in the acknowledgement section and say that the original version was written by him. So if he
Then
doesn't
you
have
have to
the,
get his permission.
if he doesn't have the time, I wouldn't keep him as a co-author because it's going to bite you at auth 48 at the latest.
Now that I know the reason, of course.
All right. So there's a possibility of going forward with that. All right. So we had another similar situation, although it's farther along. It hasn't been expired yet. The target date is still in the future, but it's clearly unrealizable. There's no active document. That's expired. There's been some prototyping work based on the original expired document. The problem, I think we discussed this a couple of months ago. The problem is it's hard to do. Basically, for the metadata server has to assign, has to do things related to another connection. I'm not sure how, I don't know enough about how RDMA works to see if that's valid. So we need someone to take this over if Christoph is not prepared to, who is a real RDMA expert.
Chuck Lieber, Oracle. I think where we left this technically is that there's an architectural problem that needs to be resolved at the transport level, and perhaps machine authentication in the RPC-over-RDMA transport may resolve it. But the issue is that when the client reaches out to an RDMA data server, there's no authentication that that client has permission to get to those, to get to the layouts. And it's accessing those layouts via raw RDMA, and there's no authentication in that. So that's the problem that we need to solve. We need active RDMA savvy engineers working on this. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just saying that's what it's going to take.
Just one point. So it seems that there are, sorry, Del. It seems that both are related in my planning. My planning was to use both PNFS RDMA because I want to work on NVMe over Fabric.
Yes.
Which kind of, I don't know what was the intention of Christoph, but it makes sense now that.
Well, I want to point out that's the thing that's different.
So I can do it without that. Okay.
This is a pure RDMA layout rather than a PNFS RDMA layout.
Yeah, the question.
So I think your work would cover the NVMe over Fabric case and would not have the architectural problem that Chuck's identified.
I was just wondering if he didn't think about this being related. That's why I didn't read this draft yet. But,
well, these are considered two separate things, and this was a sort of a farther
not related.
blue sky thing,
okay.
But it never was followed up on, and Chuck's identified this problem, and I don't know how we're going to go forward with that. Right now, it is where it is. It's late. We have to figure out what to do about it. Again, he's interested in working on this area, but he may not have time.
Okay, got it.
So now what we have to do is this so far along that we should remove it from the milestone list? Because it is not, it's not December yet, but looking at it, it's unrealistic to believe that it will be completed by December.
Is it a working group document? Sorry.
This is not a working group document
Okay,
yet.
so.
But it's something I think the working group is interested in. But I don't know what we can do. But given the problem that Chuck's mentioned, we don't really have anyone who can take this over. So there's no downside to not making the decision for another few months. But
Chuck Lieber, Oracle, drop it. I think we should drop it.
okay, I'm okay with that.
I mean, there's no, I think you've told me this before, there's no way of recording working group interest other than here's an active document, and we don't have an active document.
All right. Fine. Good point. If not so good to hear, but you're right.
But it's your point.
Okay. All right. All right. In any case, my point, your point, you're right. There we are. I think that's it.
Okay, so-
Oh, well, there are some other possibilities. Could we look at the general architecture? Chuck doesn't have any time to write it up, but maybe we discuss this. Maybe there is a way around this architectural problem. But it seems like something we'll want to address in the future, given that we have, given if there's more interest in RDMA, the idea of an RDMA layout was always a good one. It's just we have this big, solid, authentic problem. And your point maybe once we get more complicated, more comfortable with the idea of machine authentication, maybe there's something there. But I guess how you get from there to getting raw RDMA, I don't know how we're going to make that transition. All right, I think that's it for me. I think actually I'm the next one. I'm not sure though. Sorry.
You are this document.
Right.
And then I go.
All right. Yes. So we finally got a BIS document for v4.0, and I think now, for reasons that I'm going to get to, we reaching the question of why I want one for v4.1. Despite the fact that Tom thinks I'm crazy, even though he's not licensed to practice medicine anywhere. All right.
He's a doctor, though.
There you go. But he's never served a psychiatric residency anywhere. Anyway, right. The general idea, as I found dealing with the ISG, for one document describing a minor version. And the real problem for readers, if there are multiple documents on the same subject, which might or might not contradict one another. The ISG has made it clear to me that they see in various ways, not only to me, but there are some issues with lots of, not only this group, but other groups, updating documents and, gee, where the hell are we? Which is the document that describes this? So RFC 5061 is building up a set of updates, of which I've contributed to, other people have. But there's other ones that are needed that have been deferred for a while. So I think the working group needs to address this situation for 4.1. I have a proposal, so how I might go about doing so, and the working group has to decide what approach to take and whether to do this. So I'll be talking about. All right. So we have some updates that are already in process for v4.1. One is that Tom made some updated RFC 5061 with RFC 8434 with some changes that he said needed made to section 12. And I previously talked about the large set of updates in draft IETF NFSV4 RFC 5060. So those two are enough to make it business. But we have some other things in 5061. Internationalization is wrong. We have, it was, when they wrote 5661, they took the internationalization that was RFC 3530, which was wrong. Nobody ever implemented that. And so we needed a new internationalization and needs a new security consideration section. The work that Chuck has talked about gives us the possibility of having reasonable security that people will actually be able to implement it. And I think we needed to put that, to reference that work in an RFC 5661 BIS and have a new security considerations section. All right, now let's talk about the existing security considerations section. Well, there's no threat analysis, and some people in the ISG in the security directive have commented on what a mess that is. It should have been required, but it wasn't. We got by. Luckily, well, it's luckily because if they insisted on it at that time, there would be no NFSV4. If they said, yeah, you must do a security, I don't think we were up to it. And beyond that, because we didn't have that, it was made too easy for hand to wave away serious issues. And it's general field we had, oh yeah, well, most of the time it's used, in fact, it's true, it's used on local networks. And people were somehow assuming that fact meant that you didn't have to really worry about security, but you do. And as a result, we have poor security in NFSV4. OSTIS use was optional, and there's some hand waving about that. But really, it's used, it's not only optional, it's used in the clear without client authentication. There's no security. It's really totally insecure. Also, even if you're not using OSTIS, you have privacy integrity. One way is, the basic model is that you do some initial things, presumably without integrity and privacy, and then you find out as you cross into various file systems, you find out whether that file system works. But that means that certain things are done in the clear, and you can't get rid of them in the protocol. And also, what Chuck referenced, there's difficulty in offloading that security work because different keys are used on different requests. And I think in the architecture that Chuck's working on, you have the same key on each session. It's easier to offload. And the other important thing, because of those problems, the actual use of integrity and privacy is very, very small. Very few people, not many people use use RPC-sec GSS, and the amount of use of integrity and privacy is vanishingly small. So in terms of whatever the spec says, the fact of the matter is lots of people use auth-sys, and that security sucks. And the ones that use RPC-sec GSS do not do integrity and privacy routinely. And if they did, their performance would be impossible. So we have a problem. So I think we need to, when Chuck gives me a target date, I'll be able to think about a target date beyond that, because I think, as I'll say later, that you have to reference that work to make a major advance in NFS security. So the important things are things that Chuck already mentioned: encryption support on all the messages. It's not I think in your document you talk about pieces of the headers not being protected, but it's also, there are messages that are not protected at all, and they're significant. And the other thing is, even though some people might wish it, auth-sys is not going away, and we have to do something, as Chuck did, to make that use of auth-sys. And that gives us the opportunity to write an honest security considered section, which does not say, gee, this is too insecure to use on the internet and lots of other places. I don't want to say that. I don't want to beat around the bush. We want to write a reasonable security considered section which says this is secure. And that means we have to make the changes that Chuck has talked about. It's good that he's going through the security director, review. And I think the message say, well, not only is this good, but is this good for as basis for for security going forward, and such that we can be more relaxed about this. That yes, we do not have a security nightmare in the offing. Now, how would we get to this document? Well, first of all, assuming that RFC 5661 SESQI, I'm hoping to get through the RFC that we'll have a BIS document that have a large set of changes in it. But then we have some updates to add. One is a new internationalization section, and one is revising. I've looked at what's necessary to revise the document so that it does not assume that when 5661 was written, it was assumed that every version would make its own set of versioning rules. And that's no longer the case. The document has to be updated. At that point, I would have enough to produce an individual draft at that point. And at that point, the working group can consider whether to adapt that as a working group document. And if the working group was able to do that, then we'd need a few things. One is revise section 12, and I'm looking at Tom because he did 8434, and he would produce basically a section 12 that would incorporate the work that he's done in 8434, and then the security-related updates. And that I'll do a lot of the work in 56, but I need to normatively reference Chuck's document, and they have to be. They don't have to be. They have to be at least. They should probably, the time to do this is probably at least have to be in working group less code. It does not have to be published as an RFC, but they have to have assumed their final form. And then the working group will have to look about errata and other issues But at that point, I think we have so I think, I don't know, that's at least a year out, but that depends on, but I think that's something that's doable. The working group has to decide whether to do this. All right. Now, let's think about the forms of the documents. One is, in a number of cases, we just contradict the base, say, hey, this document updates RFC 5061 because it says something different, and let the reader figure it out. That's not good, but we've done that with 8434, and it did not get any pushback. We've done with 8178, did not get any pushback, but no one was paying attention to that. But basically, we're saying that, hey, we just said this is wrong, and the implication was everyone was clear that this was contradicting RFC 5061 and the V4.2 document, and people accepted that it had to be done. The other thing was that we tried to do is explicitly tell users what has changed. That we did it in 8587. Chuck got by with that, and the conclusion that we reached is that that can be done for small updates. And we've also done a BIS document, 7531. So we have to consider the ISG. Tolerance for style 2 updates has become more limited, and as we said, limited to smaller updates. And we hope that the review of style 3 updates will be easier. The work that I can't remember can't remember the name of the person who is doing that document.
You mean Adam Roach?
Adam Roach, yeah. I don't know how. There's been a lot of discussion of that. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but I think generally the ISG is looking in that direction.
Yes, Magnus Westlund. Yeah, I mean, to clarify something, and is that, I mean, what I think ISG sees is that when you do these updates or lift the protocol to new revision, something that you should create a set of documents this is all the same maturity level together, they fit together, and that defines the protocol. That doesn't need to be one document, and I think that's actually something you need to think about is actually, can you split this 600-700 monster you have into a set of modules, which is the whole set of documents is the 4.1 specification, because that will make it easier for everyone to review, etc. And actually, if you ever continue work in future, it might be easy to just, okay, this is because you may be only touching one module, you can update one particular part of it.
So Magnus, this is Tommy. This is something we had thought about trying to do in the past. That was my recommendation after doing the 4.0 BIS. You do not want to do a 600-page document BIS, because for one thing, the previous changes were made by the ISG after you're done with your edits. So you have to go track those down, and that took me like 6 months to go find every single place it's been changed.
Yeah.
So please, I would do the modules.
Yeah.
I think you need to do some version of 3. Trying to do incremental updates works when you're dealing with contained feature function. I see a plan here to completely replace internationalization and completely replace the security considerations section along with a pile of security functionality. And incremental is not going to work well for those. I think you need to plan on a wholesale replacement, modular if possible.
So David, Tom Haynes again. One of the things we found with that was when we updated the security module or the internationalization for the 4.0, and we'd already come out with a 4.1, we had to go update them both, right? And so they even though they were major versions, it turned out we always wanted the security considerations to be in sync, and we always wanted the internationalization to be in sync.
Yeah, I think I'm basically agreeing with you that those are sufficiently fundamental and pervasive in their effects on the rest of the protocol that you want to just do a completely consistent set of new docs because those two have to be changed.
Yes. Okay. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Right. So the problem is when you point out, we have V4.0 is one protocol, V4.1 is a different protocol, but there are two pieces like internationalization, security considerations, which should be set, and we would have to really revise the whole philosophy to say there'd be some V4.0 that are not version specific, but that's very difficult to do.
Wait a minute. Say that again slowly. I think I lost you about 3 words before the end.
Well, okay. Well, we have a number of pieces of NFSV4 that we want to be the same between V4.0 and V4.1. And if we followed the philosophy of document things once, then we'd have to completely revise the.
No. The suggestion here is that 7530 is the current 4.1. This I thought was a discussion about revving 4.0 because in part the I-18N and security in 4.0 are a problem.
No, the one in 4.0 was fixed by RFC 7530.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've got my versions backwards. So 7530 fixed 4.0. Now you want to apply the same fixes to 4.1.
No, you're still saying it wrong. So 7530 is the BIS for 4.0. And it actually fixes the internationalization and the security. And those, we said those are also applied to the 4.1. We just never put it into a document. So we need the RFC, the 4.1 BIS, whatever the monster looks like, to say that the security and the internationalization out of 7530 is what's current.
That's actually fairly short text, which would be good.
Well, yeah, but would it better do that than to simply say, hey, just take that one that's from 7530 and just put it in there, rather than cross-reference.
So David, I would say we have 2 new documents. One says internationalization in NFSV4, and one says security considerations in NFSV4, and it applies to 4.0, 4.1, and 4.2. And I'm actually willing to go do that work because it makes my life easier.
Okay, well, let's think about it.
Makes sense.
So that's an alternative. All right.
I am going to second Tom's thing. I'd rather have, if it applies to all versions of NFS, I'd rather never have the conversation of propagating and cut and pasting documents to 4.2. And just, I'd rather have it separate and canonical by itself and applying to all.
Right. We only have that problem we don't have that problem with 4.2 because we define 4.2 as a set of extensions. So where we do have things, we've defined 4.0 and 4.1 as separate protocols. So this would be just a one-time thing. And if Tom's willing to work on that, then we could do that.
Okay. So we have a proposal. I'm going to write it down. I do want to talk to Tom about this and also talk to Magnus about this also.
Sure.
On our approach. Before we start doing anything to clean this up, I want to make sure we do something that will pass muster through the IETF. Okay. But I also very much want to minimize work at this point on this stuff. Okay. I don't want to create the problem that Tom identified of updating a gigantic document and then have everybody trying to figure out what just changed. Okay. Let's we'll take this off. We'll take this after the meeting on mail.
Okay, sure.
Chuck Lever, Oracle. This is a slightly different topic, but one item I didn't see on the previous slides about what needs to go in this document is I think we need to consider what has not been implemented in the NFSV 4.1 implementations to date, and look at ways that can be, those items can be excised from the new specification.
You're thinking about things like director delegations?
And RDMA step up and things like that.
SSV.
SSV, I believe, has been implemented. I thought Linux does.
No,
Okay,
Bruce always says he wants to do it, but it has not been implemented.
okay. Well, I think that needs to be in a bullet point included in this conversation. That was my only comment.
Okay, sure.
Magnus Westlund. Yeah, I agree. I think it's good that you do spend the time to consider what you can remove, so to say, which isn't used or not necessary, etc., to streamline the protocol a bit. That's not bad exercise, and yeah, as long as you not overdo it. But
So I can I ask Brian Plosky here. Removing unused features from a document is a respin of the document, but it is a how do I say this? It's a simple edit. I don't want to open up a removal of unused features to the document and then adding new text, creating a gigantic editing review cycle. Okay.
okay, yeah, that's. I mean, yeah, and
So
I mean,
I'd rather not touch a document.
yeah, okay, but still, I mean, yeah, but I mean, if you have unused, non-implemented features, and which it's not going to create any kind of interoperability or anything issues by removing, I think that's rather clear cut to just remove those features.
Right, but that's yes. I just want to make sure that we don't take a cleanup exercise and convert it into a let's rewrite the rest of the document exercise.
No, okay, I understand where you are, and
Everyone will start running.
Okay.
yeah, and I was saying we modularize this spec. It's just that I don't think we can go forward with the monster, but that's finding the right places in this spec to say, okay, these section or sections are describing this. We take that as one.
I think if we deleted every other page, no one would notice.
Okay, it's not as simple as just delete this feature. So, like SSV, you delete the section that describes SSV, then you delete the where it's referencing exchange ID. It's work.
I know. No, I
Yes, we'll need to do it, but
Yes.
it's not as trivial as you think. But anyway, I think that's done. I think it's pretty clear here. We are going to do this. We're going to do something with the BIS document, and so
Okay.
I think we'll follow. I will come out with assuming that SESQI gets done, then I will come out and come out with the individual draft, and then we'll figure out at that point a decision about what the steps forward are.
Okay. Is there another slide? Sorry, this says see next slide.
So maybe it is. Oh yes.
But
yes.
we are out of time, roughly.
Wrong. Oh right.
One question.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
with
Yeah.
Chuck's
Oh yeah. Because you mentioned the idea of security and the times of maybe we should do that for before it out at the same time. So I think that's
Okay.
maybe we'll discuss. I think I summarized this guy make an alternative proposal because the proposal that I made here is probably not valid because of what Tom pointed out. So I'll send some mail the list revising this.
Okay.
Okay. Now you.
5 minutes, how much?
If you could do this in 5, Tom has a quick one too. Wait a minute. What were you? You were. This is not you, right?
No, that's Tom.
Hold on. Want to? Where were you? Integrity, right?
Data reduction at the very top.
Oh, sorry.
First.
Data reduction. Got it. Sorry. Got it. Okay, go. You're on. Go for it.
So, okay, so I can go, it works. Okay, no, didn't? Do I have to put there?
But just, what do you want to do?
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'm trying to add some new stuff in the NFS protocol related to the current state of the storage, where everybody is running around in circles to increase data reduction in order to make storage cheaper, because the media is very expensive, the flash media that is used. Also, the new media can be used also as memory, so it can change the entire mechanics of the server doing data reduction. So I'm going to look at two use cases. One use the normal use case with NFSV4-2, which assume that there is an access to the extended attributes of the file if extended attributes are still supported. And then the backend identifies the file system block, which is part of the specific file, and then it applies data reduction according to that. That's the simpler case. The second case would be also interesting because NVMe is also the very important media, and there is a SCSI NVMe protocol that Christophe introduced, and I think it has value. It has merit, and I was surprised that he was busy, because otherwise. So in this case, there is some communication in the block level. The motivation is that the extended attribute, if they would be possible to be used, it will be an easy way to add new function, and also we can add. In principle, we need 2 parameters, so it could be a little bit more than you can use on a POC, but it could be easier if you can use extended attributes. Now, what's missing is the user information related to data reduction that arrays cannot know, and to extended attributes, we can communicate to the engine that does the data reduction. The idea that we are promoting in our draft is to enable a way to communicate between the file layer on the client to the block layer that does data reduction in the backend. There is a lot of data from analysts regarding the typical data reduction for typical types of file and objects, and that's it's good because it can be really known to the application, to the user and the application, so the user can add these attributes, or by the extension that's data that explains the quality of data reduction for different compression duplication for different types of files, like JPEG files and all kind of files that through the extension there is a list of potential data reduction. So this will help in a sense that, for example, if the data is not compressible, not deduplicable at all, because it's already very much compressed, it will add to improve the performance of the server, because it won't do work that it's a throwaway. So, we are thinking the most important case will be the NVMe case, because the media is expensive, and there is already a lot of servers, NFS servers, including that have support NVMe, and they sell NVMe. So I think that's why I went back to the protocol that Christophe started, and I think it has value, it has merit. Again, I cannot ask Christophe to continue. So as I said, I am interested to take over whatever, to find a way to use it. And I hope that the fact that it was expired doesn't make a difference. And again, I would like to see if we can approach Christophe at least to ask to see if he's interested or not. But if not, I'm interested. So what do we need? We need a way to communicate data reduction characteristics for a client to server, either because the extension of the file will tell us what type of file is, or there is another way, because files that are MPEG, for example, or other videos, they have some metadata in the file itself, which the user can read and transfer to as an attribute, and by that enable all the types, the files that are the same type, to have a specific type of data reduction. Again, these are some examples from analysts. Now, I understand the problem with the extended attribute. I thought that maybe it could be acceptable, but in light of what we discussed before, I think that's a problem, because if there's no implementation, why should there be a new implementation for data reduction attributes? It's questionable. I would follow the consensus, and I think that that's something that there are ways, for example, for a simplified model using just normal attributes, but I'm not sure that is enough, because if you don't achieve much, people won't use it. So you need to get important improvement, otherwise it won't be. So again, I'm just saying major points. So this is some proposal. In principle, I started to write the protocol, but I stopped because David was, he's right. He was right. First, let's see if it's interest and if we want to move on with this, either as a private or working group. I don't know, but those are some ideas. It's not necessarily a solution. So what I would like to ask, first of all, the major question, should the data reduction attributes extended or others added to NFSV4 protocol? First question. So
Tom Haynes, Hammerspace. So I think some things you need to pull out here. One that I heard here that I didn't hear in reading the draft or earlier is that you're saying the DR attributes are user defined. Right?
yes.
So you need to make that point, because that points out why you need extended attributes and not fatters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I leave David to answer because he was the one.
No, I'm just trying to say that's an important consideration for why you do not want fatters, is because you have to let the users define them.
Yeah.
But even if you use xatters, you have to define how the server and the client understand that this xatter you call alpha means the same thing for both of them.
Yes.
Okay. And then the final thing is if you do want xatters, of course, the xatters that Mark had put into the protocol never got implemented.
Yeah, I know.
And we won't let them go forward. Go forward if you don't do the xatter stuff, right? There has to be an implementation.
So yeah, so that's one thing that I consider, by the way. But I need some consensus, because there's a certain point where I want to be sure that I'm going the right path, so it can be becoming a working group document. That's my goal. Currently, I can keep it private for a while, let's say 1-2 revisions. But if there's no interest, then I will. It's from my perspective, it's kind of I want to make a promotion of this data reduction area. So I have other ideas also related to this, related to the fact that currently the client could be like a client, but could be in the cloud. So that's another thing that, okay, so the question should become a working group. My question is simpler, first of all. Do you think it has any value? Should I continue, or maybe as a private until I fix all the things that you asked, or you want me to drop it?
So I think you should go ahead with it. You have an interesting use case. You just have to develop why you should go with xatters or why you can go with fatters.
Yeah.
And work on it as a
look. You have to understand, I wasn't active for about 8 years in this group, so I forgot. So I had to bring something at least to know that it's of interest. I'm busy. Let's say I don't have spare time not to do it, but I think it's important. So especially that the media is getting it's expensive, and it's not going to get so cheap ever. So, and sure.
Yeah.
David.
Okay, one thing I think you should be clear about is you're working on 2 things.
Yeah.
You're working possibly reviving
the NVMe, yeah.
And this data reduction thing. But they may have interactions, but they have to be done separately because
Yes, yes, I agree.
the PNFS thing is in V4.1, and this thing is,
Yeah.
the next status will only do it in V4.2. So you want to make sure that.
Yes, I agree with that. In fact, the first use case is the more important that I want to address, but it's because the PNFS could have a value also for NVMe. I thought to mention this. So I will do this. I will move that one further, maybe, independently of this. And then when it's, yeah, so, exactly. So when it's ready, maybe you'll merge both and we'll make them, I don't know. That's something that
Chuck Lever, Oracle. So are you using these extended attributes to give commands to the underlying block storage?
No, I'm using this it's like an opaque. So I can say if it's compressible, dedupable, and
So you are communicating with the underlying
yeah,
storage?
yeah. That's a user
Okay,
way to.
That's something that we expressly forbid with user extended attributes, I believe. They're meant to be opaque storage, but they're not meant to be used as an IO cuddle, as a side channel.
Yeah, I understand that.
So that's one reason why we might really need to go with a fatter and not with an extended attribute.
Yeah, look, I thought it's the easiest way for me to work on both cases, the NVMe and NFS normal. So that was my thinking, but I didn't have a concrete conclusion. So that's why I came here.
And it's easier for us to extend the protocol if you're defining new fatters rather than defining new operations.
Yeah. Well, I'm not defining operation, I'm defining parameters of data. So in a sense,
Well,
characteristics.
You put up a list, you said get deadder and set deadder.
Yeah, no, as an example.
We are officially over our working group slot. Do you
I
want
can
to?
do in 3 minutes.
The only thing is, I assume that he said that
I suppose we stop the clock.
Yeah, no.
I'm just asking, I should continue, right? So that's-
Yes, we continue it, but let's take this on.
Yeah,
let's-
yeah,
You
no,
mean
I
you
just-
talk. Got it.
I said next step. So
Okay. This is a quickie.
Yeah,
Shit.
that's what he said. Oops. Stop.
I'm getting you there.
All right, so I've extended my delegation state ID paper. The major difference from last time is the layout weak cache consistency operation. So let's just go, whoops. So what my model is when we have, for example, echo foo to bar, we have an open layout get, it goes to the MDS, we have a get device info, goes to the MDS, we have a write of 3 bytes, which goes to the DS, and then when we start to close the file with a layout return, set attr, deleg return, and get attr, well, in order to check the consistency of the file to the client, we have to also send a get attr from the MDS to the DS in order to determine that the write succeeded. And this is adds to the round trip time of the application. And you can see with an echo, I don't want to have to take 30 seconds in order to do the operation. And so, oops. The attr caching that we introduced in the earlier version doesn't help us because it only provides the M time and the A time of the metadata file, not of the data file. And we still have to go compare what the instance file has. And so we notice that the write has weak cache consistency when it's V3. And what we would do is introduce a new operation, layout weak cache consistency, which sends that information back to the MDS and it removes the need for the get attr. The other operations, layout return, layout commit, don't provide this ability to do weak cache consistency. And also it's the quickest way I know to get this new operation in. I'm being honest. I'm being bluntly honest. It's really fast for me to get draft. You know what? We agreed for the previous draft to be a working group item. I added something major, so I didn't make it a working group item. I want to make it a working group item after this draft. And there's my 3 minutes. Questions? I went really fast. So now I can tell my boss I presented. He wants to know that.
Jesus. You get that on recording? Okay, so that's it. There's no opportunity for wrap up. I have the minutes. I'll be posting those to our website. If you haven't signed the blue sheet, sign it. If you just walked in the room for some other meeting, feel free to sign the blue sheet anyway. Thanks, guys. Have a great conference. Let me, you want to yell at me?